What's good? It's your boy Fannon. All right, man. I'm gonna talk about something subscriber asked me about to respond to. They said something about how Deontay Wilder said that black fighters shouldn't sign with Eddie Hearn, and how he felt that Barry Hearn showed his true feelings, right? And asked me to respond to that. And so I'm going to do that in this video. Before I do, though, I want to welcome you back to the channel. Subscribers, if you're not subscribed, subscribe and hit the bell icon so you can be notified of when we release more videos. Also, check out the Patreon. I've been real busy trying to fix this, the production value on these videos and all that good stuff. And so I haven't really been able to focus on the Patreon last week because it's just increased the time that I've had to work on this. But now that it's pretty much settled, we'll be back to that, and you guys can look forward to more stuff on the Patreon. Thank you so much for your patience and your support. Okay, here's the thing. First of all, I didn't hear Deontay Wilder say that. I heard Deontay Wilder say that he feels sorry for the people in that stable because Barry Hearn showed what he really felt. That's what I heard him say. And he said something really harsh about Dillian White because Dillian White was just giggling it off, ha ha. And then later on, he came out and defended Barry Hearn, right? So Deontay Wilder had some real harsh words for him. I don't have any issue with the harsh words that Deontay Wilder had for Dillian White. Not going to repeat them, but we probably all know what those are. Here's my thing. I never thought that I know that he didn't mean that literally. And I say this over and over again. Barry Hearn didn't mean that literally because, slaves don't get contracts unless it's a contract to buy them or a contract to sell them. So we know that's not accurate. However, his choice of words are reprehensible, and I don't have to, nor do I think it's reasonable for anybody to have to get inside his brain and try to figure out exactly what it is that he meant. No, some things are just on their face, insulting, and you've got to believe that since he was laughing and joking, that there is some truth behind what he said. In the exploitative contracts and the way that he described the relationship between him and his fighters. Okay, that is not reasonable. Deontay Wilder doesn't have to go out of his way, go interview Barry Hearn's mama, figure out what kind of person he was, hire a private investigator to see, if he can get copies of it. He ain't got to do all of that nonsense. He can just go off what that dude said. He's right to be insulted by it, right to wonder where this dude is coming from, all of that good stuff. But as far as what I'm saying about why I think it's reasonable to question whether you would sign with Eddie Hearn is less to do with Barry Hearn and what Barry Hearn said, and more to do with what I understand to be the case, what I saw last Saturday. Now, here's the thing. Canelo Alvarez just fought a fighter, a U.S. fighter, Daniel Jacobs, that signed with Matchroom Boxing. And the purses, I'm talking about the purses, the publicly put out, the publicly acknowledged purses for the fight. I'm not talking about some backroom, $10 million are supposed to be somewhere out there in the wind talk. I'm talking about what was put out by the Nevada State Athletic Commission was $35 million for Canelo Alvarez, $2.5 million for Daniel Jacobs. Those were the purses that were published by the Nevada State Athletic Commission. That is a 93.7% split between Canelo Alvarez and Daniel Jacobs, with penalties for several $100,000 a pound penalties for a rehydration clause, which limited Daniel Jacobs from getting more than 170 pounds the next morning. That is not a rule that should have been in effect for that fight. As a result, Danny Jacobs was responsible for $1 million in fees for doing something that was perfectly legal. Perfectly legal, perfectly within the rules of the champ that were given out by the commissions, but in a rehydration clause negotiated by Eddie Hearn and Oscar De La Hoya. And a 93-7 split. And again, I don't want to hear anything about the $10 million that DAZN guaranteed him, because I'm not hearing anything about the $300 million that DAZN guaranteed Canelo. Canelo's whole contract isn't $35 million. He has more money on his contract with DAZN. That's public knowledge. So the fact that Danny Jacobs has more money on his contract with DAZN has nothing to do with the fact that he got a 93-7 split. 93-7 split. That's ludicrous in a unification fight. Ludicrous in a unification fight. And $1 million penalties? Eddie Hearn says, oh, I'll pay his penalties. Where's the proof you paid it? What if Eddie Hearn says, I didn't really mean that. I'll get back with you, Danny. I get back with you, Danny. Maybe he'll keep his word. I don't know, but it should have never been there. That's not negotiating. You didn't really go hard to negotiate for Daniel Jacobs. It seemed like you went hard to negotiate for DAZN and your relationship with DAZN to bring a big fight and get a big fight with DAZN. So he laid down in a negotiation with Oscar De La Hoya to the benefit of himself and DAZN and to the detriment of Danny Jacobs. Because Danny Jacobs, if they meant to give $10 million to him, it should say $10 million on the purse. That's that Don King stuff. Oh, I'm gonna pay you I'm paying stock, right? Anyway, and go check and you can look at you can look at the post that was out there by Dan Rayfield. It said $2.5 million for the Nevada State Athletic Commission. In parentheses, it said $10 million, which is like, maybe it's not that bad because he's got more money coming from DAZN. So does Canelo. Canelo didn't report $300 million in parentheses for him. Nah, man. What was the purse? What did you get paid for that fight? For that fight. Do you remember when Eddie Hearn was out there kicking and screaming about how Al Haymon was paying his fighters too much money? Well, on that purse, he didn't pay Danny Jacobs too much money. But then let's proceed to the next thing that I saw. After the fight was over, and Canelo Alvarez and his trainer were saying that they wanted to fight Demetrius Andrade next because they want to unify the belts. Demetrius Andrade, right? The WBO 160-pound champ for all the belts. What did Eddie Hearn say? Well, if that can't be made, we'll make the Gennady Golovkin fight. He acted as if, this is Demetrius Andrade's promoter, acted as if he was more interested in a fight between Daniel Jacobs and Canelo Alvarez than his own fighter. Thought you were his promoter. Aren't you supposed to be pushing? Aren't you supposed to be pushing for that fight? If you're going to represent his interests, aren't you Demetrius Andrade's interests? Aren't you supposed to be trying to push that? Instead of saying that you want the Gennady Golovkin fight, who he doesn't even represent. But DAZN. But DAZN. There's a lot of people have said, 78 said this before. I don't doubt at all that Eddie Hearn is getting paid money, his own money, aside from what the boxers are getting paid, to him for fights that take place on DAZN. And if that is true, that is a conflict of interest between him as an individual promoter and him having a deal with the network, if that's the case. But I can't think for any other reason why Eddie Hearn would try to push for a Canelo Alvarez versus Gennady Golovkin rematch when Canelo Alvarez didn't even ask for the fight. And Canelo Alvarez asked to fight his fighter. Wouldn't that be crazy if Eddie Hearn stood in the way of Demetrius Andrade getting his shot at all four belts in favor of Gennady Golovkin because that's something DAZN wants? And Eddie Hearn is going to mouthpiece that? See, I never called that deal a slave contract with Barry Hearn. I say that it is just a heavily dependent contractor. And when you have a bunch of fighters fighting underneath the same guy, you're dependent on them giving you fights. So even though you might have a relationship and you might deserve the fight, that promoter might think, it's not in the best interest of my promotional company to make that fight. Similar to how Eddie Hearn signed Luis Ortiz with selling him on the idea that he was going to fight Anthony Joshua, but then the fight never happened, and because, Luis Ortiz underperformed. So now this is not just a situation with just Eddie Hearn. It is a situation with promoters. And promoters have traditionally said they are going to value what they think the interest of their promotional company is over the interest of their fighter. And that is not just Eddie Hearn, that's a lot of people. And in order to do so, you have to have strict control over the fighters. You have to have the ability to tell them who to fight and when to fight. And if they don't want to do the fight, you got a minimum clause in there that says how much you got to pay them if you can't make the fights. But they only have to make the fight if you turn down a reasonable offer. Man, I could go through for days how that situation and those contracts are. If they ain't slavery, they're sharecropping. But regardless, I don't even think, in order to say, why would you want to fight? Why would you want to fight with Eddie Hearn and Matchroom Boxing? I say the same thing about that in Top Rank. If you're a young fighter that does not have a name and really needs somebody to put you on their card and get your name out there and get your name known, right? All that, you need promoters that have the ability to make all these fight cards. Yeah, they're important for that. They're very important for that. But when you're a situation where you're a known commodity, then you might not need that as much. Which is why Oscar De La Hoya broke off, why Manny Pacquiao broke off, why Floyd Mayweather Jr. broke off, why Muhammad Ali was never tied down. You look at the promotional history of Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali was the original free agent. He fought for Don King when he wanted to fight for Don King. He fought for Top Rank when he wanted to fight for Top Rank. It didn't matter because he was Ali. Now, that's not the case with some smaller fighters, obviously. But anyway, that's my 2 cents on that. Let me know what you think in the comment section. I don't have any issue with people signing with Matchroom when they need them. Devin Haney, that could be a good signage for him, right? Just make sure that you aren't locked down forever and this guy has some reason to want to put you up at the forefront and you don't just become food for everybody else and for his plans. So anyway, it is what it is. And with that, I'm out. Peace.